Welcome to another coffee tasting. I'm your host, Aaron Taylor, and today we are tasting a single origin coffee called Colombia Cantillo family. And so this is just basically named after the family who grew this coffee and processed this coffee. So we're going to learn a little bit about them after we taste the coffee brewed three different ways. So for those of you who are joining me for the first time, welcome. It's an honor to have you here joining me for my coffee tastings. And for those of you returning, welcome back. It is an honor to have you back and to join me for another coffee tasting. And if you haven't had a chance to hit that like and subscribe button down below, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps me create more content and more videos for you guys and just to, keep this going. Um, so please help me and do smash that like and subscribe button. And then for those of you joining me for the first time, we like to brew the coffee three different ways. We like to brew it on a pour over, Chemex, and a French press. That way we get to explore the different flavor notes that different brew processes have to offer, but from the same blend of coffee. With different brew methods, we're going to get different flavor notes out of our coffee. And so with the pour over, we're going to get a lot more of those bright notes. With the Chemex, we're going to get a little bit more of those bitter notes, but it's not going to be so intense, so it's going to be a little bit more of a balanced cup of coffee. With this particular blend of coffee, we're getting a complex feature of notes of floral aromas with a melon sweetness. So when you do a pour over or a Chemex, you want to pour a little bit of water on your grinds at first. Just get all the grinds wet and then let your coffee bloom. And what letting it bloom does is it allows the air in between each of the grinds to rise to the surface so that it doesn't get pushed down, creating a barrier, slowing down your brew process. Because if you push it down to the bottom and you're creating this air barrier, slows down your brew process, causing you to overbrew your coffee, and it's going to impact the flavor in a negative way. So we didn't get an effective bloom on our Chemex here. So I just kind of adjusted the paper filter a little bit to kind of help some of that air that's trapped down there kind of move out of the way. Because I kind of noticed that we didn't get a lot of water brewing through there. And so that's what was causing that is there was some air trapped down below. So we just let some of that air out, help it brew. So with this cup of coffee, when I was grinding it, I noticed that it was a much lighter roasted. It looked like a blonde roast. So this is going to be very subtle notes, and then it's going to have a lot of those bright floral aromas. We're going to actually go ahead and get this French press going. So with just by looking at the color of the coffee that we're getting, we're already noticing a much lighter look as well. Very reminiscent of the color of the bean. It's got like a very parchment paper look to it. So we're gonna go ahead and try the French press first today. The pour over and the Chemex are taking a little bit longer. And the reason why they're taking a little bit longer is because of the type of bean that they are. It's a lighter roast, and because it's a lighter roast, it's going to be a little bit more porous, and it's going to take slightly longer time to brew. So as I smell the coffee, we're definitely getting those melon floral aromas right off the bat. A lot of bright flavors. It's got like a sweet melon aroma. Wow. That is really floral. It's got a really intense floral notes. Not a whole lot of earthy bitters that we're used to. Not a whole lot of nutty notes. It's very tea reminiscent. So with this cup of coffee, we're getting some very, very intense floral aromas, and then we get that sweet melon flavor too. This is definitely a really, really good cup of coffee to try if you want to explore different flavors in coffee. Because typically, when you try different types of coffee, they're so similar in their flavors that you can't really discern the differences between them. But this one's got such a wild difference in flavor notes to it than what we're used to, that you're definitely going to be able to pinpoint those different notes that this coffee has that's specific to it. And that is the intense floral aromas that we get from the very beginning. And then as the floral aromas start to wash away, we get that sweet melon flavor. So now we're going to try the pour over. And so with the pour over, we're going to get a lot more of those floral flavors, floral notes. Wow. Okay. So we're getting some intense, bright flavors. The floral flavor isn't actually as intense as I thought it would be. It's actually starting to get more of those floral notes as the coffee starts to wash away. So the main flavor of the pour over is that bright melon sweetness. So that's what we get right off the bat with the pour overs, that bright melon sweetness. And then as it washes away, we get that floral flavor. And those floral flavors is going to leave us with that slight dry palate. So now that I'm done drinking the coffee and the my palate is clear, I have a slightly dry tongue from those floral flavors that kind of lingered on to the sides. See, that is a really good cup of coffee. It's got like a really nice sweetness at the very beginning. I'm not a fan of the floral leftovers after you get that nice subtle sweetness. And the main reason is because of the that dry mouth feeling that it leaves us with. That's the part that I'm not a particular fan of, because that means you would want something to pair that with to help with that inconvenience of the dry mouth feeling. So now we're going to try the Chemex. So with the Chemex is going to be very similar to the French press. We're going to get those strong floral aromas alongside that sweet melon flavor. Oh yeah. So we're getting a lot more of those floral flavors in the very beginning, and then we're getting that intense melon sweetness as well. And then as those floral flavors start to wash away, the melon sweetness starts to come through, giving it a little bit more of a sweeter flavor. This is really, really good. If I had to choose a particular favorite on this blend of coffee, I would definitely choose the Chemex because we're definitely getting a more balanced cup of coffee. The floral flavors aren't as intense as they are on the French press. And then also with that melon sweetness coming through, especially as those floral flavors start to wash away, tastes really, really good. This would make for a really good like summertime coffee where you get like that nice crisp melon that's going to complement the ice part of the coffee, and then you get those floral flavors that gives it almost like a tea. So this would make for a really, really good iced coffee or cold brew, and I'm actually gonna have to test that out and see how well that comes out. So I'll probably feature that on my next live stream where we're going to explore the flavor notes of the Cantillo family, or the the Cantillo family as a cold brew coffee, and see how flavor notes of the melon sweetness and those floral aromas complement that ice coffee flavor. Very, very delicious. That is really, really good. I'm going to sip on the pour over though, because that is probably. I really do like the Chemex, but the pour over has that initial sweet kick that I do like as well, and it's going to be a little bit easier to sip on as we talk about this Cantillo family coffee. So this coffee is grown by a gentleman by the name of Isaiah Cantillo, and he is a fourth generation farmer, and he actually works on the farm with his sons today. So it's really cool. The Stumptown has partnered with the Cantillo family in 2007 and has been direct sourcing coffee from them ever since. And with this coffee, we're getting exceptional cup of coffee, very complex, especially for the region that it comes from. So this coffee comes from Colombia, and it is high up in the Andes Mountains in the Aila province. Sorry, it's a very hard word to pronounce. And Isaiah actually purchased this farm in 1987, and half the farm is dedicated to growing coffee, and the other half is dedicated to keeping the natural native forest. And so that's what's really cool about this coffee is the fact that we have someone who is a fourth generation farmer. His life is dedicated to coffee, but not just coffee, but the fact that, there's that awareness that we need to preserve the forests for the planet. And so he has dedicated half of his land to making sure that that it doesn't get deforested and that he can maintain the wildlife that lives there. So it's really cool. And the other really cool part about this coffee is the fact that he is working on the farm with his sons, and so by the time his sons take over on the farm, they will be fifth generation farmers. And so I think that's important to learn about this coffee, the fact that this coffee is a family run business, and that Isaiah Cantillo is a fourth generation farmer, and he actually purchased this farm in the 1987. And so he will be passing down a legacy and a piece of land to his sons that they can hold on to and grow from and pass on to their sons and continue this tradition of growing coffee and culture of where they come from. So that's very, very important. And then just learning like the different processes that go into the coffee and make it that much more important, and like the dedication that goes into providing an exceptional cup of coffee. So this coffee, when they hand pick the cherries, they do a wash method, and during the wash method they depulp the cherries, and when they depulp the cherries, the denser beans will sit below the less dense beans. So they'll go through and they will collect the denser, more flavorful beans to make sure that they're providing a full flavorful cup of coffee. And the reason why is because you get like a more robust flavor, and you get like that parchment on the outside of the bean that has like a sweet honey flavor, and then they extract that with that parchment still attached to the bean, and then they put it down in shaded drying beds, and as they put it down on drying wow, as they lay it down on shaded drying beds, they have to continuously shift the beans so that they don't mold. And then at the same time, that parchment paper that's on the outside, it's like a skin on the bean, starts to turn a brown color, and it kind of caramelizes, almost like an apple, and it develops natural sugars, and that's going to give us that sweet melon flavor that we get from this coffee. Is that process that they do where they leave that parchment paper on there during the drying process so that it gives us that sweet flavor. Really, really good. We're getting some very, very intense sweet notes alongside with some floral notes. That is a really, really good cup of coffee. And my favorite part about it is it's very different than your normal cup of coffee that you get. So you can easily discern the differences between like your normal Colombian milk chocolate note coffee versus this Colombia coffee that gives us floral notes with a sweet melon flavor. Really, really good. This is probably one of the sweetest coffees I've ever had, and there's no sweetener added to it. It's just the natural flavor notes of the coffee. I would definitely recommend this coffee for everyone. And then just by buying a bag of this coffee or even going down to your local coffee shop, if you're down in Palm Springs, California, I would suggest going to Ernest Coffee. That is where I purchased this bag of coffee, and you can also have it brewed as a hot coffee there. And then that way you can really support these coffee growers and this family and help them create a sustainable livelihood. And then also at the same time, you're going to enjoy a exceptional sweet cup of coffee. Really, really good, you guys. Thanks for joining today's live stream. Please do support your local business and visit the Ernest Coffee Shop if you get a chance. And by supporting the local business, you're not only supporting the Ernest Coffee Shop, but you're also supporting the Cantillo family or whichever particular cup of coffee you buy that day. But what's important to remember is that we're supporting families who grow coffee around the world by drinking coffee, no matter where you drink your coffee from. If you enjoyed today's coffee tasting, go ahead and hit the link down below. That's going to have you learn a little bit more about Ernest Coffee and the coffees that they have to offer there. The link above is just going to be a link that YouTube thinks that you might like. Have a great day, everyone.